You're listening to Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I thought there was going to be like a new one every break. I was so excited.
You want more, Hal? We'll give you more. Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820. Hoo-yah!
Welcome back to the show, and welcome Phillip Ittner joining us again from Ukraine right now, where it is chilly, but he is keeping himself warm and artistically satisfied, both by roaming around filming things and videoing things for his upcoming vlogs and the story that he's going to end up ultimately telling after all this is over as well, and enjoying his new artwork behind him, including Olga of Kiev, one of the most BA women in human history. Right up there with Ripley and Black Widow, and except real. And then of course Johnny Million is with us. Follow at Johnny Million and at Phillip Ittner 1L 2Ts on Twitter for as long as it lasts. It may not be much longer, so we'll find something. But oh man! So lots to talk about. Not the least of which is I want to hear if there's any kind of sense, Phillip, about this concept of attacks from the north. We've got information that that MiGs have been flying from Belarus over Ukraine. That said, they seem to be leaving Belarus and flying over towards the Donbass and around that area, not out over the center of the country or anywhere else. So
well, they better not.
Yeah, exactly. And then of course, Iran is just reporting that, Russia's reporting that Iran has supplied them with more of these kind of scooter level kamikaze drones, the Shahed drones. But it's, it's not boding well for the Russians. The other thing too is Prigozhin's Wagner group got hit right in their base. So let's start with that.
200 dead.
Yeah, because we were chatting about that on Wednesday. But we didn't have a full report.
No, we didn't. According to the Ukrainians, they hit with the HIMARS system one of the bases for the Wagner group, which it never ceases to amaze me, all the people that say that Ukraine is filled with Nazis, and yet on the other side of the equation, we actually have a paramilitary group named after Adolf Hitler's favorite composer.
Right.
But go figure. Anyhow, the Wagner group got hit by the HIMARS system pretty hard at a headquarters station in Lugansk in support of the offensive that they're trying to take Bakhmut. Clearly, Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner group, is trying to get a trophy that he can take to Vladimir Putin to show his effectiveness as a fighting group. But because of the capability and the distance of the HIMARS, they were able to smack their headquarters. Now, the Russians say, a handful of people died, 3, 6, 10, whatever. Right. The Ukrainians are like, no, that was filled with your officer corps, and we got upwards of 200 people dead. I mean, clearly both sides are either going to downplay or hype it up, depending.
So you can weigh the middle of it and air it towards who's been the most truthful about stuff so far, and you'll come out with probably.
And also if you know the capacity of the HIMARS, and if you hit something with a HIMARS, we have seen repeated videos of the massive damage that those things can do because they're so precise, and because they carry a warhead that is significant enough, and they can cluster them together, and it's just it's a deadly weapon. Right. So I would err more towards the Ukrainian side of things, but hey, look, who knows? The important thing is, in many ways, that they were able to hit the command center for the Wagner group, which gave them a bloody nose. No two ways about it.
Did you hear?
When it comes to the Belarus, did I hear what?
Yeah. Did you hear the reason why they found that place in particular? Did you hear the story about why?
Oh, goody. Okay. No, I hadn't heard this yet. I admittedly have been out filming and doing other stuff, and yesterday was crazy because we got hit so hard.
Because Prigozhin's kid got a cush job in the back at that place instead of being sent to the front or into the fighting, he got to hang around at this cushier base. They call it this place the guest house. It was like a bed and breakfast type hotel.
It's a resort.
It's very nice. And so he put his own son in this place. He says his son is fine. There aren't any pictures, but he's telling everybody that his son is fine. But there is a picture that they used the geolocation data from that his son put on social media of himself in front of the building with other Wagner Group dudes.
Of course.
Prigozhin's own son.
You know, when that broke, right? I remember the day it broke, that they had hit this, and at the first the first thing I heard about this strike was a bunch of tankies who because I'm a masochist, I listen to more than I should, but guys who are pro-Russia, anti-NATO, Westerners, the kind of like, ooh, you know,
they're gonna get it now. Right.
Yeah, America's bad, and everything America does is bad, but Russia's great.
Yeah, which is the weirdest part of it. Like, if you're going to be a doubter about governments, then at least have some consistency about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
go support New Zealand.
Yes, exactly.
You know, they're lovely. They're lovely.
Yeah.
And if they don't want our nuclear submarines in their ports in Auckland or wherever it is, you know, then good on them. Fine, I got no problem with that. But if you're going to tell me that Russia is better than having lived in Russia and having seen what Russia does at war, you're going to tell me they're on an equivalency level with America? Well, forget about it, because I've seen what the Russians do. It's goofy. Firsthand.
Anyways, you were saying.
And I've seen what the Americans do. Anyhow, so when this first broke, all the tankies, all the kind of anti-NATO, anti-American, like, oh my God, those dastardly Ukrainians blew up a resort town. They're just indiscriminately attacking stuff. And I was sitting there going, you idiots. There's no way the Ukrainians would just decide to hit some sort of bed and breakfast or some sort of hotel in Lugansk. Of course it was housing some sort of, officer corps.
Especially after Zelensky has spent the earlier part of the week saying we need more rounds, we need more ammunition. Like, you're not going to waste anything just doing attrition bombing unless you're Russia, which is just like, we're not even sure these things will blow up on landing, so let's just chuck all of them at the infrastructure. 92% of the targets they're hitting are infrastructure throughout the country at this point. Well,
I mean, yesterday was a testament to that. Yeah, and we will talk about that dollar to dollar equivalency when we talk about the Patriots, because Patriot missile systems, if indeed, and it does look like they're coming, those are expensive. They're very expensive. So you don't want it has to be impressed upon the Ukrainians not to shoot the Patriots off to take out, $200,000 Iranian drones. Not that I think the Ukrainians would do that, but I think it will be very important to go, look, these systems are expensive. They're really your top line. If you think a nuke is coming, and we will get intelligence. Dear Malcolm Nance and I have sat down many times over a beer or a steak dinner. He loves his steak. And discuss this, because he was actually, in his military career in the Naval Command, he spent some time at NORAD. I believe it was NORAD, but at the nuclear command chain. And he said, look, we have, because of our negotiations and our treaties and all the rest of it, we know where pretty much every nuke is. And for them to haul a nuclear warhead out of storage and put it onto there's been a lot of talk about the Russians having maneuvered a system which could launch a nuclear warhead. Well, that's all well and good, except for the fact that you have to actually physically get the warhead itself, the thing that creates nuclear fission and creates an explosion. That has to be brought out of storage and put onto that system, so they can freak everybody out moving these missile systems around. But if they don't have the warhead, and we are so interlocked and we know where the warheads are, that we will be able to monitor when they pull them out, and that's not happening. So when they get the Patriots, They must save those for the really deadly potential attacks.
Yeah, I think
we got a break to go to.
Yes, we do. In about a minute. And when we come back, I do want to discuss kind of some of the language around Poland that has come back, and maybe explain to people why Russia thinks that's a selling point for their own people. About Poland is just waiting to invade the west of Ukraine. Is this weird storyline that it's like a zombie storyline that comes back occasionally that needs some kind of historical context.
With a sliver of, I won't say truth, but a sliver of veracity that needs to be discussed, and we will talk about it on the other side.
Yeah, historical.
No, we'll talk about it on the other side, but it's really interesting. It's really interesting. The Russians have got it wrong, but they're not. There is context, and we'll talk about it.
That's right. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Only on 1 day a week. I get it. I'm going to have to jump on GarageBand and start sawing something together. This is the Hal Sparks Show. Wow. And a guitar note, and then progressive and all. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Hey, Hal, did you mean something like this?
This is the Hal Sparks Show. Wow. And a guitar note, and then progressive and all. Yeah, it's going to be good.
The Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Welcome back to the show. In a moment, we're going to talk with Phillip Ittner about this whole Poland narrative that the Russians tend to try to use as a divide and conquer strategy. I'm very curious about it. But to catch people up kind of on the current state of affairs, more than 100 Russian soldiers were wounded near Tokmak and Pologiv in the last 24 hours. Bakhmut and Idiev, they keep trying to push into this area. Again, this whole idea of this like Pez dispenser money printing thing that the Wagner group is doing with recruits, where they just send them to the front to get killed, and then they claim the territory. And when those guys die, they say, well, we lost the territory. They don't have to refund the Russian government. They just do it again and get paid again. Get paid 3-4 times for the same piece of land. And December 15th, the enemy lost Russians lost 100 people wounded and a cache of ammunition in Tokmak and Pologi settlements. And missile forces and the artillery defenses of Ukraine hit 5 personnel concentration areas, a command post, and 3 ammunition depots just yesterday. This is not... remember when we were all like, oh my God, they're mobilizing 300,000 people, and what they're really mobilizing is 1 million people, and it's going to be terrible. And it has not played out that way at all. It has simply been the same thing again. And by the way, if you have questions for Phillip Ittner in the chat room, let Johnny Million know, and we'll be getting to those as we go on too. Now, and then tag Johnny Million in those questions, and that helps. Okay, so Poland. The root of this story and why they think it has legs.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack here, because much of Western Ukraine at one point was it's a section of the country called East Galicia. If you look at the perspective of Poland, and it was indeed part of it was part of Poland for many, many, many years. What the Russians are doing, so bear with me, this gets complicated.
Sure.
The Russians are trying to do, as you say, a divide and conquer. That suddenly Poland is going to have a land seizure when the Ukrainian government inevitably collapses from the stress of this war, that Poland will use that as an opportune moment to grab that land which historically was theirs. Now, the Poles have repeatedly said that those days are gone. We have no claim on that territory. We don't want that territory. We're part of the European Union. We have no intention of expansion. That's 20th century, 19th century thinking. But of course, in typical Russian fashion, they still think that the world works that way. They still think that it's a Napoleonic land seizure, that it's just the same. They haven't recognized the world has moved on from this kind of like, I'm just going to take this land by force of arms and or by by hook or by crook, and that's the land itself is the important thing. That
was me. Sorry, that's me.
Kitty. But I think it's worth mentioning, and here's the really interesting point about this, is that they're almost kind of half right, in that if Ukraine does finally become a self-determining, independent, sovereign nation, something that has been denied because so many in Europe are deathly afraid of the massive size of the country and the capability, the GDP, the sheer might of this landmass, which not only is enormous, but also is you've got all this great land for growing stuff. It's got industry. It's got population. It's going to be a powerhouse. If that is to join the European Union, there is a very real possibility that the balance of power on the European continent could shift from a Franco-German dominated European Union or continent to the balance of power, the axis shifting towards the east, whereas there is a historic there was once a empire in Europe called the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, which went from the Baltics. If you look at your map, the Baltics on the north, which is the Baltic Sea, all the way down to the Mediterranean and the Black Sea, used to be an empire called the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, which broke apart, became part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. We're not here for a history lesson, but it's relevant. What the Russians almost are twigging to, and what I think a lot of people in Europe are twigging to, is the fact that if Ukraine does finally break away and stop being a colony of one empire or another, something that many Europeans, both Western and Eastern, have been afraid of, because this could be a very powerful country. And I believe it will. But what the Russians aren't saying, the Russians are doing it like the Napoleonic land grab. What they really should be thinking of is, will this be a shift in the balance of power in the European Union from Berlin and Paris to Warsaw and Kiev? Which I think is indeed a possibility. But that would be much more benign and about commerce.
Yes. Also, I'm sure the Polish are hoping for this, and they do have a lot of historical and physical weight as far as landmass and their central pivot point as far as where they are geographically. That helps. I think there's as much of a chance, if not a stronger chance, that there's more of a Ukrainian alignment with Finland and Sweden and Estonia and Lithuania and Latvia than there is of Poland having outsized control over the Ukrainians. And it's all going to align with Europe as a greater economic bloc anyways, because they all basically want the same stuff. It's so it makes no sense for it's not like the Polish are going to invade. It makes no sense. And Russia, that's the storyline they're putting. They're putting it that's what
they're trying to sell. They're trying to sell the argument that Ukraine is just going to swap one colonial master for another, and it's going to be Poland. Yeah, then it's going to be Poland.
What?
I mean, it reveals their ignorance. It reveals their mindset that their idea that Ukraine can never be anything other than a subjugated colonial entity, and they're so wrong. And if the Europeans think that, they're going to have comeuppance as well. I'm telling you this. I'm telling you this sincerely, having spent as much time as I have in this country. They are done being a they're done being a colony.
Sure.
Never again.
Well, nobody's going to expect them to be. I mean,
they don't have to be.
The Japanese and the Germans aren't. Exactly. No. We don't care. And the interesting thing is
those things are gone.
Yes, and the U.S. system itself is predicated on this idea of do what you're good at, and if we can, and we'll do what we're good at, and they'll do what they're good at, and we'll all just trade. That's largely how the system works. When we're not talking about resource wealth, which is dying on the vine, which brings us to sort of oil and gas. I announced earlier in the show that the Biden administration is replenishing the oil they sold from the strategic reserve at $93 a barrel. They're buying it back for $72 and making a profit on the and refilling it. It's just goofy. So, and since the idea wasn't to lower the cost of gas and oil, not to make that initial profit on an investment in the first place. They're basically 2 wins out of the same effort. There's a guy like there was, Julia Davis, who we love, who, along with like War Translated, is one of the people who really breaks down a lot of, what the Russians are talking about on Solovyev's show. And what's her name? Your ex-girlfriend.
Margarita Simeon.
Yeah, Simeon, right.
Or what's her? It's terrible. I'm gapping her. It's all horrible. But yeah, thank goodness for Julia.
So they have this guy come on this week, which usually these folks are pretty jingoistic, a lot of saber rattling, chest thumping, a lot of silverback behavior. But they bring on this dude wearing a full-on Z T-shirt on every time he's on the show, right? And he was, I guess, either sent as one of their correspondents to the front lines or close to it, whatever, or he was actually serving. But he's quoted this week as saying, "We were joking about American weapons. Let me tell you, after getting to know HIMARS and the 150 millimeter projectiles up close and personal, it's not very funny anymore." It's amazing to me.
Julia is doing such just a great service.
Right.
What I
cataloging this for history. Right.
Cataloging this for history, and also now, just so that we're aware of where their headspace is. And
yes.
I found that interesting. But the other thing I found interesting this entire week from them is their repeated conversation about who are we if we are not an empire. They are
right.
They, meaning the West, meaning primarily America, are trying to destroy us.
Right.
But then they say that we are trying to destroy them by making them change into something they haven't been in the past. So even at some level, they themselves recognize that they will have to readdress who they are, their sense of self-worth, their sense of space and place on the global stage. Who are they if they are not the Russian Empire? If they do not have and hold territory external to what is traditionally considered Muscovy. There was a time when Russia wasn't even called Russia. It was called the Principalities of Muscovy. And that's basically St. Petersburg, Rostov, this kind of European side of the Russian nation. And they are openly saying, who are we if we are not an empire? And it's this really crisis of identity for them.
Welcome to the present. Yeah, that's the nature
of the 21st century, guys.
Yeah, right. Welcome to the current international world system, where we all have to get along, and that these old, outmoded ways of just attacking people and taking what they got are dying on the vine. The United States is tired of it. We're getting out of all of our war entanglements slowly but surely. Some of it takes some time to apparently defuse these bombs so that they don't just go off. But we're basically just retracting in this, and and leaving it, and Russia and China are trying to fill this gap that they think exists. But the reality is, America is moving out of these things, not because we just don't want to do it anymore, but because it's unnecessary. It is not how the future will be won, nor will it be how economic challenges are met in the future at all. No, and as we move away from resource economies, let's take a break, though, before you hold that thought, because we're going to take a break.
We'll talk about this. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, on the other side. We'll be back right after this. This is the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Yeah, quit it.
Attention. Stop what you're doing. Because we're coming back to the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
They went a little crazy with it, and I appreciate it.
Now let's get back with House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Welcome back to the show. I'm just talking to Johnny Million's cat. It's what I do. By the way, before we get into the questions that have been presented by our chat room at infotainmentwars.com, we don't need the documents. We have everything memorized. So your ex-girlfriend, Simonian, she said, and I thought this was one of her best quotes so far. She said, why, everybody's trying to figure out, why are they invading? Is it to denazify and demilitarize? And is it NATO expansion? No. Simonian says, we are fighting because we are different and for our right to be different. Which is, keep in mind, these are the people who don't want there to be gay pride parades. So, right. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, it's their Russkaya dusha. It's their Russian soul that is so unique on the global stage.
So unique. Yes, because nobody in this in human history has ever invaded another country just to take their stuff and wipe them out. What a new and fascinating take on human interaction. I'm amazed.
And the repeated mantra I've heard so often in the last month or so is, what is the world without Russia? There is no world without us. It's kind of like, well, yeah, but who are you? It's not on us to decide where you are on the planet. Who are you?
Right.
So it's an identity crisis. Simonian is really, it's so transparent when she talks about this kind of stuff, because she is so terrified of, like, oh my God, we might have to look in the mirror.
Well, yeah. I mean, you'd have to, you got to stand there and look at the fact that, they haven't produced anything worth a damn without the help of NASA in, 5 decades. And if you include nuclear weapons in things that aren't worth a damn, ever, what are you doing? And it's not like they couldn't. It's not like the Russian people themselves are incapable of high-level technical thought. They've just been suffocated for so long. This is so stupid. Well,
it's a deeply traumatized country, and I mean, to be serious.
Oh, come on, we all are
100%.
Well, yeah, we're Gen Xers.
No.
Yeah.
No, look. I agree with you. I agree with you. But there is Russia and Ukraine, and they have been traumatized at their own hands by their own power elite or whatever. Look, all countries have this kind of stuff, but they are really, really screwed up in Russia, and it's
right.
It doesn't excuse a darn thing. I am not letting them get away with anything, but
Understood.
they need to get on the couch and spend some time with their therapist and figure out who the heck they are. Do a little introspection.
We got to take these questions, but there's the same argument I had with Tara Dublin Rocks, that at a certain point, I do not believe that psychologically broken answers everything, and I think a lot of people just decide at some point that the way they get their needs met is by being awful. It is that people who don't understand that there is pleasure in being terrible and do all the character work to keep yourself from acting on baser impulses have no idea that there are a bunch of people who aren't like, dear daddy, love me, in what they do. They're like, this is how I get it. And that there's a lot of those gross people in the world.
And this one quick other thing, and we are going to get to the questions because I love the question so much. But look at the Black Mirror aspect of Ukraine and Russia, where Russia refuses to look in the mirror, refuses to do the work, refuses to get on the couch and talk to the therapist. And here in Ukraine, which is equally, if not more, traumatized by the Holodomor, by the Second World War, much of which the fighting was on this soil, not in Russia.
Right.
Remember, it was the Soviet Union. These people at least recognize we are traumatized and we must do something about it. There are social programs all throughout this country. There are right now children traumatized by the fighting. I have a very dear friend who is working with a children's aid group out in the West. And one of their first and their priorities, their biggest priorities is let's deal with the PTSD that these kids are suffering from, because this is the generation that will grow up in a free and independent Ukraine, and they must address the mental health issue. But
they need to be psychologically sound after all this stuff. You don't want them to just be able to destroy the future of your country. They don't even, by just wrecking.
So just because you had Stalin, and just because you lived in a communist, and just because the Russian Orthodox Church has screwed your head up, and you lived under the czars, and your history has been one of subjugation and trauma and just awfulness, it does not excuse you from
taking it out on anybody else.
Russia.
Right.
Yeah, taking it out on anybody. So
we
get on the couch, do the work.
I don't care if George H.W. Bush was nice to George W. Bush, or if Dick Cheney's parents, taught him Ayn Randian Darwinism. It doesn't excuse their behavior when they were in the presidency, and I will vote against anyone even remotely close to that the rest of my life for that very reason. There's a difference. Yeah. So, anyways, let's grab a question. So, because you and I will eat this up because we get carried away over the Wednesdays.
I know we do.
Yeah.
We do. All right, let's do
All
it.
right. So, can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Sure can.
So, you got a question from Greg Edmond. Please ask Phil how COVID-19 and the flu are affecting Ukraine.
Still very much here. Still, COVID is, and look, it's winter. People's immune systems are down. You still see, folks walking around with masks. But I'm also not going to lie. I'm not going to, pretend that folks don't have other priorities right now, like making sure that they have light in their homes and food on the table and don't freeze to death. So it's there. It's still very present. It's you can get immune boosters. I don't know which boosters they get. I suspect most of the vaccines probably are European, because the Russian the Sputnik is useless. It's an old outdated one that they stole from the laboratories in Oxford before it was even completed. So they don't take the Sputnik, even if they had better relations with Russia. So I'm suspecting most of the vaccines that they have here are the European vaccines. But it's not the priority, but it hasn't gone away. Let's just put it that way.
All right. Can I squeeze in another one here?
Yeah.
Yep.
So from Facebook last week, Kevin Patrick asked, how much of the Navy are the Russians utilizing?
Well, they're utilizing quite an awful lot of it in terms of what they can. Their surface fleet is restricted because there are military systems the Ukrainians are using, not just anti-ship missiles that they shoot from the coastline, but they also have this naval drone that they've almost perfected. And by the way, Western powers, I have no doubt, are looking at those naval drones and thinking, well, how can we improve on that? So the Ukrainians have deterrence for surface level ships. What they don't have deterrence for is the submarine fleet. And also, in addition to that, Russia can bring out some of its missile frigates and shoot. They look, a lot of the cruise missiles that are coming at it, like that came at us yesterday and on Friday. Those, a good chunk of those come from the Black Sea. A lot of them are from underwater, are from submarine fleets, because those aren't subject to attack from the Ukrainian systems. But yes, the Black Sea is a platform. It is a launching pad for a lot of the munitions that get chucked at us here. And we've seen how badly, for example, Odessa, right there on the water's edge, without time to react, is liable to be getting hit pretty hard. So the short answer is the Black Sea is a platform from which the Russians do launch missile systems, and it is not good. And they're doing everything they can to dissuade the Russians, but clearly we're still getting hit from there.
Yeah.
When do we go to break?
We got at the quarter.
One quick one.
Yeah, we got.
Nice.
Oh, we got plenty of time. Oh, we got tons of time. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
you
Go
should
for it,
Gibbons
Johnny.
last week.
Yeah.
Does Phil know of any Russian involvement in the attempts in Germany?
The coup attempt by the guy with the triple barrel name, the Baron what's it?
Yeah.
No, the Russians were very much involved in that. Very much involved in that. There's no doubt whatsoever. There were guys who had direct links to the Kremlin or the GRU, the intelligence arm of the Russian military. We know it for the Germans know it. They know that was at least in part coordinated with or propped up or supported by the Russians. Look, there are a lot of fellow travelers in the West when it comes to Russia, there are useful idiots. But make no mistake about it, The Russians think they're at war with the entire West, even before Ukraine started. I would argue that Ukraine is a byproduct of them thinking that they are already in a global war with the West, rather than them thinking that because they invaded Ukraine, that they're at war with the West. They are fixated on the idea that the West wants to destroy them for a variety of reasons, not least of which their history, but also because Putin has decided that it's a really useful tool for him to make their population deathly afraid of yet another Western invasion of Russia, given their history, because then the Russian people will not fuss with the political shortcomings that the kleptocracy that Putin has created steals from them on a daily basis. So he's been spreading this message that the West is out to get us, and we better start doing something about it. And now he's they're acting like they're at war. So they interfered in Germany. They interfered with us in 2016. They interfered with the Brexit referendum. They have tried to get Le Pen in France, in a position of power. They have done a lot of manipulation in Italy. Their fingers are in a lot of different pies because they know they can't fight a conventional war, but they can use their intelligence services to destabilize things, and they're doing it.
Real quick,
be aware of it.
Yeah, right. Real quick before we get to break, and we're going to take more of your questions at infotainmentwars.com and at twitch.tv/HalSparks. If you're on Twitch, don't forget to subscribe. Helps us out immensely, especially as the holidays come up and the shows get lighter because we're all away. Interestingly, two things. One is, I still don't quite grasp why they think there's such a huge difference between Russia and the West in terms of it's not, I mean, it would be if they were still the USSR, but they are not. And they have, for all practical purposes, other than the imperialistic aspects of things, have no intention of going back to the socialist or communist aspects of things. They don't give a crap about it enough of their citizens to even try. So I don't know why they think there's that huge difference, except for just the West is just a placeholder name for whoever's on the other side of the resource war they think they're fighting. The other thing is that
the decadent West. We'll go into it, but we can't go into it. But there's the whole Russian soul thing and the decadent West and cultural. We don't believe in LGBT rights and this whole idea of inalienable human rights. That's
just butch nonsense. But the other thing is that there is a milestone that is going to be hit by Russia by their own accounting sometime in the next probably 48 hours. The official number of dead Russians in this fight, not just wounded, but dead Russians, will top 100,000 within the next 48 hours. They are at 99,435. That's the official count. That's from 7 days ago. They may have already surpassed it. I mean, it might be a lie already and blah, blah, blah. 99, that's their numbers, their count right now. Officially, the one that was presented to Vladimir Putin yesterday was 99,435 dead Russian soldiers. That's not civilian deaths. That is ridiculous. And they are going in 48 hours in the space of not even a year. We're at 9 months of this stuff.
10 months. 10 months. 100,000 people dead for nothing.
100,000 Russian soldiers and conscripts dead. In a country with a demographic collapse problem, just like China. They're like childbearing years sons are being burned at an attrition rate that is 10 times more than 10 times at this point the death rate of people who died in Afghanistan in a decade. They lost 9,000 some odd soldiers in a decade in Afghanistan. This is insane. It's grotesque. Yeah. And they're going to hit this number, and I'm curious what the reaction will be in the Julia Davis clips when that number crosses their threshold. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the HalSparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. We'll be back right after this with the happy ending. I wanted to get that in before that because that's not happy at all.
Not happy.
No. We'll be back.
You are happy, let us be happy together, whether whether the weather is cloudy or sunny. I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky. Let us get lucky together, whether the weather is cloudy or breezy. I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. Cause isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling. Let us smile together, whether the weather is cloudy or stormy. I will still be there in the morning. I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I hope that you like cereal.
Yeah. I got so excited. I was like hitting the stuff on my desk just to be silly, and I almost hit my BS button, which we've got us dumped in the middle of the happy fun, which would not have been good. So, Lovely wanted to cover that. I think part of our happy ending should be that Marjorie Taylor Greene is concerned that sex toys are for sale in the same aisle as lube at Target and CVS, right?
Pathetic.
Yeah,
So
it's just
in her cocktail dress with her slit upper leg.
You're right.
The woman's a nightmare.
Yep, but again, I'm curious to see where her funding comes from when this is all said and done. Because she's one of these folks that the QAnons wouldn't exist otherwise as well. And if you want to talk about input from these crowds, from the Russians in terms of this, this is for real.
And if we want to keep going with the happy ending, I was out today filming. There are people. It was a miserable day weather-wise, but people are still out buying.
There is
stuff
a
for
Christmas question. Stargal wants to know if Phil is celebrating Christmas on December 25th or in January.
Well, they'll do both. They'll do both because you have Orthodoxy here, and then you have Western Christianity, which Protestant and Catholic here in. Now they have changed the official kind of state. They have solidified or recognized the 25th as a Christmas holiday. So there is an adoption of what they call Catholic Christmas here. As a statewide recognized holiday, which they hadn't done in the past. There are little stores selling tinsel and ornaments and Christmas trees, and let's not forget the Festival of Lights, the Jewish community in Ukraine. Yes, there is a strong Jewish community in Ukraine, believe it or not. The Central Synagogue, I was just down there a day or two ago filming for this thing about a vlog I'm doing about the holiday season. The Festival of Lights will happen. The menorah, despite the efforts of Vladimir Putin, will be lit, just like the Maccabees. There will be lights on the menorah this year, despite Putin trying to knock out the energy sector and knock out all lights. The menorah will be lit. So Christmas, Hanukkah, it's all happening here. And people are there. Look, it's not a normal Christmas. No way. But, and it's not, last year there was an enormous Christmas village down in the old city. It was beautiful. I wasn't there, but I've seen pictures. This year, obviously, they can't do that. But there are still, people selling little Patron, the bomb-sniffing dog, Christmas tree ornaments. There are wreaths, beautiful. I was in a underground because a lot of stuff here is underground given the weather. Little walkways and stuff like a subterranean city almost. And there was a beautiful display of wreaths that were being sold. People putting together fir tree, branches and stuff. Look, it's happening. People are conscious of the trauma and the difficulties that they're going through. They're conscious that this is not a normal Christmas, but they are still thankful for everything that they have. Their families are gathering. People will raise a glass. There will be joy. There will be light, and there will be good food and good drink, and people will celebrate absolutely 100%. With the caveat that it's hard to celebrate and be as joyous as one would hope when they're going through what they're going through. But they're not going to let it keep them down. No way. Yes, there's Christmas here.
Well, I'm still stuck on the idea that they get 2 Christmases. What the heck? It's like
well, they don't get to you get one Christmas if you're on the Gregorian calendar, and you get another if you're in the Julian calendar because of the divide between Orthodoxy and Western Christianity. So you don't celebrate both; you celebrate one or the other. Usually, if you got a family, and plus, by the way, Orthodox Christmas is a very different affair than what the trappings that we're used to in Western. In Western Christianity, it's a much more solemn event, Orthodox Christmas. What the Soviets used to do is they tried very hard, the Soviets, to get away from religion. So what they tried to do, and in many ways they're actually quite successful at it, was to change everything that was with Christmas, because that's religious, and put it on to New Year's, which is secular. So you see a lot of people, and they still do it in Russia really strongly. But here in Ukraine, they do to a certain extent, but Christmas is taking over. They celebrate Novy God, or New Year. And all they did was just swap over stuff. Like the Russians have, instead of Father Christmas, they have Grandfather Frost, who runs around with usually a very beautiful ice maiden, and they jump over the fire. Yeah, the whole story of Ded Moroz, Grandfather Frost, is that he jumps over the fire. He waits on the other side of the fire, and the snow princess, the snow maiden, jumps over the fire, and eventually her love and dedication to Father Frost, she melts in the fire. Typical Russian stuff. Sure. Here in Ukraine, they do St. Nicholas. Catholics and Protestants, of course, have Santa Claus. It's the holiday season. Everybody kind of does have a festival at this time of year. Cultures around the world, and they'll have this one too. But unless you have a family that's both, maybe your father divorced and is now with a family that's Orthodox Christian, maybe you get your 7th, I think it's 7th of January or 3rd of January. Your Orthodox Christmas, and then maybe on your mother's side she stayed Catholic, and so you get that sort of thing. But that way it's the same as if your father was Jewish and your mother was Catholic, and they split, so you get Hanukkah and Christmas. But
pretty sweet.
Generally you get one or the other. Well, yeah, because we all know how really cool Hanukkah gifts are.
They're getting
when
better.
I was growing up, I say this with love, because my Jewish friends, when I was growing up, we'd be like, I got the new Atari, and they'd be like, I got a pencil box.
Right.
So
I got a rock. Yeah. Right. It's a very Charlie Brown.
That's my favorite.
But it's all good. It's all good, whether you're Jewish or Protestant or Catholic or Orthodox or whatever it is you are. During this time of year, this holiday season, war cannot stop it. Putin cannot stop it. There's gonna be pig fat, salo, on black bread.
Johnny, by the way, but Johnny and I both had
Chicago,
and it was spectacular. Where's that?
It's a heart attack. It's a heart attack, but it's tasty.
It isn't. You process. That's not saturated fat. That's not processed. That's just treated. It's different. It's like cooked. It's not. That's different. Calm down.
Okay,
it's delicious.
You tell that to my heart after I've had a whole full plate of it.
While you're going clear.
Yeah, pump.
If you have a hole in your esophagus that goes straight to your aorta, you have bigger fish to fry than pork fish. Right.
There's breads. There's these lovely breads that they do.
Oh, there are.
Cakes.
That's the bread's the problem. It's not the fat. It's the bread. It's the carbs.
And the sugars. The sugars. Lots of sugar.
Also, yeah.
Oh,
well, don't sugar your fat.
Lots of sugar.
Oh, now I'm getting hungry. This is wrong. All right, one more question real quick. We've got like a minute left.
I'm choosing my favorite question from Ed's 3D Tech. Can you ask Phil if lasers are the next defense in Ukraine? Please say yes.
I wish, but no, probably not. I that would be great. I know that the U.S. military is working with lasers, and we were hoping in Iraq that would be developed to a point where they could just take out mortars, because that was the worst thing when you were on a U.S. military base in Iraq with those darn mortars. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. We're not there.
You can mess up the track. The good news is you can mess up the tracking on them, but you cannot heat them up and make them blow up. So, but you can throw off their tracking with a laser, especially if they're thermal tracking. They can you can create artificial wherever you hit it. It thinks it should go that way. So it's just like it works the same way as countermeasures. That just throwing that out there, but not quite yet.
And here on the happy ending, as we draw to a close, yesterday we were struck with over it was 76 missiles or some form of ordnance was thrown at this country, and 60 of them were shot out of the air. It is not lasers, but Ukrainian air defense is still. Thank goodness for the look. I woke up yesterday to the sound of air raid sirens and explosions. Too close for comfort. So they did.
Thanks so much, guys.
But the Ukrainian air defenses are still strong, and thank goodness for them.
That's right. Thanks so much for joining us, Phillip Ittner. Thank you, Johnny Million. Thank you, Chicago. We'll see you guys next week. We're right at the net. Like we just made it just under the wire. Like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show. Infotainmentwars.com, twitch.tv/Hal Sparks. Follow us on Twitter until it dies. Bye. Ouch. That actually hurt me.